Kentucky basketball is doing some hard work on the recruiting trail right now, and we spoke with somebody that has the latest on three of their biggest prospects.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be talking with Jacob Polacheck of Kentucky Sports Radio to take a look at some of the big-time prospects that Kentucky is also taking a look at on the recruiting trail. What does he know about the latest on some of the big-time names? Also going to take a look at what we think about this upcoming season. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you've been watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more, and as playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long, so you can visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, without further ado, here is our conversation with Jacob Polacheck. Excited to be joined by Jacob Polacheck of Kentucky Sports Radio. Really excited to talk about some Kentucky basketball recruiting as Mark Pope and his staff are out on the recruiting trail getting things done. Jacob, I want to start here with you, just kind of talking generics about what's going on with this program. Obviously, new head coach, new coaching staff. Everybody's getting out in a variety of different places all over the country, sometimes even out of the country, to look at a number of different prospects. Just kind of tell me about how you feel about the way this staff is kind of approaching things on the trail, and is there reason for optimism with some of these high-profile guys that they're going for?
Yeah, I like their approach so far. I know a lot of people might be concerned about not having that first 2025 commit yet, but I think they're taking their time, getting official visits scheduled. And the thing that I really like to see is that they're really spreading out their scouting among the different circuits from Adidas, Puma, and of course Nike. Obviously, I know there was a lot of talk about how Mark Pope was in Atlanta for Adidas, Indy for Puma, and Peach Jam, all in the span of 10 hours or something. That was pretty fun to see. But yeah, it's good to see just a wide net being cast. And I think that very soon we're going to start to see that list narrow down and narrow in on who they really want to target in this 2025 class.
Yeah, I'm not really sitting here concerned with how the Wildcats approach next year's class because it's a new head coach, right? You see the same thing when it comes to college football. You kind of let a coach get a year or two under his belt, kind of get his feet wet to see what he can really do on the recruiting trail at a place like Kentucky. Obviously, I think it's a little bit easier. I think that's fair to say just because the resources, the brand, and all of that. But I really do think that there are, despite, not having any major concerns and kind of seeing what the transfer portal and what Pope does with his rosters here for the first season or so, they really are swinging for the fences with some of the best prospects in next year's class. They are making no bones about it. And I wanted to start here with a guy that I just think is going to be incredible from the West Coast, Tounde Yessoufou, a four-star prospect, top 20 prospect according to On3, actually top 15 prospect, if I'm not mistaken, a 6'5" shooting guard in the 2025 class. I've raved about this kid on my show. I think he is excellent. You could put him at the 3. You could put him at power forward if you wanted to. I think he is that explosive and physical. Love his game. Talk to me a little bit about how Kentucky's approaching Yessoufou and kind of what's your thoughts on the prospect here.
Yeah, Tunde Yessoufou, he's a guy that I saw at Peach Jam 2 years ago, and I've been hoping Kentucky goes after him for a long time. He was originally supposed to visit Kentucky on August 1st, and we talked to him over at Peach Jam. It was like, it seems like you're moving back that August 1st visit. Why why is that pushed back? And he said the Kentucky staff, they were the ones that asked him to push it back because they want to be that last visit so that they can close on him. I found that really interesting. I know that he's been a Kentucky, he has followed Kentucky basketball for a very long time, and I know that he was really hoping they would get involved, and when they did, he was really excited about that. I don't know if they've officially extended an offer, but it seems like they like to do that over on the official visits, so I would expect them to offer during that time.
So just based off of what I've seen, and you are free to check me on anything that I say about these prospects. What I have seen has come from YouTube or Twitter. You obviously, like you said, got to see him in person at Peach Jam. But when I look at Yessoufou, there are a couple of different media members that I've seen out there kind of question, his athleticism and his jump. And I don't see that. I don't see what the concern there could possibly be. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at a guy like Yessoufou, who is listed across the board at a couple of different spots, on 3, if I'm not mistaken, has him as a shooting guard. I think 24/7 Sports actually has him as a power forward, so he could really play 2 through 4 here. But I think he is one of the most explosive prospects that I've actually watched recently. And I said this on an episode just a few weeks back. He kind of reminds me of Chris Livingston, except I think he's a higher flyer, and I think he's just simply got a higher upside just overall as an offensive prospect. You can tell me if I'm wrong here, but how do you feel about his game just based on what you've seen?
Yeah, I love his game. I think that he could really play that 2 through 4. I'd lean him more towards that 2 or 3, especially with the way that Kentucky's putting together this class. I think that you probably want to fill him more into that 2 or 3 spot. He reminds me a lot. I know I went to Kansas, and I covered a lot of Kansas basketball, and he reminds me a lot of a guy, Ochai Agbaji, who came into Kansas and was very raw, but physically just so gifted, and just strength-wise, he's a grown man. You hear it all the time about him. It's going to just take the question I have with him is the efficiency. The game that I saw this week, he didn't shoot the ball very well. He was great at getting to his spots, but just not knocking the shots down. So, the real question with him is how efficient can he be, and where does he fill in position-wise? I have no concerns about the athleticism.
I think that's a really, really good comp there with Agbaji. If Kentucky fans, if you don't know, actually, back in 2021, during that Kansas national championship run, the 2021-22 season, if I'm not mistaken, 18 points while shooting almost 41% from 3 for Agbaji, and the physical stats, 6'5", 210. Yessoufou listed at 6'5", 210. So I think that is a really good comparison. The efficiency, I agree with you, maybe a little bit of a question. Just based on what I saw, his jump shot's a little flat, but I mean, when he's left open, he can knock it down. It's not like he's not completely unable to make outside shots or to make shots, period. But I think he's a prospect that is super, super fun, especially whenever he gets going. He's somebody that is very high on my personal board as far as Cats that I want to see, or at least players that I want to see committed to the Cats, I should say. Before we continue our conversation with Jacob Polacheck of KSR, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports, and I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting quite like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want, and all I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. That is FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. There's another player here, another player that I think would be just perfect for what Mark Pope and the Wildcats want to do. I continue to say over and over and over and over when talking about these recruits that Kentucky's going after, just about the system, the style of play, the way that Kentucky wants to play offense, how Mark Pope wants to approach it. But it really does seem like they're going out and getting guys, or trying to get guys that are high profile and can do 2 things really, really well. They can play well in transition, just period, on both ends of the floor, and they can shoot the lights out of the basketball. And this next prospect that I want to discuss here for a second can definitely shoot the lights out of the basketball, and that is Braylon Mullins, a 6'4", 180-pound shooting guard out of Greenfield, Indiana. Top 35 prospect according to On3, top 30 prospect according to the industry ranking. Just a super, super fun shooter to watch, just based on what I've seen. That is what he does. And actually, whenever I was checking back through my Google Docs to kind of find notes on these different guys we're going to talk about here today, I just put bro shoots as my only notes for Braylon Mullins. Kind of tell me what you're seeing with his recruitment with Kentucky and kind of the vibe there with one of, I think, one of the best shooters in next year's class.
Yeah. So obviously he just released a top 10. It's hard to kind of gauge when you have a top 10 who the real contenders are, but the two schools that seem to be standing out from the pack are Indiana and Kentucky. I know he set some official visits. I believe he set official visits to both of those schools. And going into this past weekend at Peach Jam, my thought was, okay, Indiana is probably the favorite. Coming away from Peach Jam, I'm not so sure about that. I think that Kentucky's in a really good spot with him. The one question about Indiana that I have is they've been so in on his recruitment for so long that I'm starting to get the sense that, hey, maybe they'll do anything to close this out and just put all their resources into landing Braylon Mullins, and that could be a difficult situation for Kentucky. But I know that he really liked Kentucky. Obviously, like you talked about, he's a good fit for that system. I do really like Kentucky's chances, but I do think he'll be taking official visits, and they'll have to do a really good job during this recruiting process to close him.
Taking a ton of different official visits, if I'm not mistaken, Jacob, to Indiana, Alabama, North Carolina, Michigan, UConn, Tennessee as well. I mean, he is going down the list of some really good programs here that Kentucky is contending against. Would you agree, though, Jacob, as far as players that Mark Pope has had in the past, when you look at, for like, not just this past season, but his previous years at BYU, doesn't Braylon Mullins just fit that archetype of wing or shooting guard that's a little bit taller than you would get at that position normally, or is it just a really just kind of lanky shooter that can really drill it from anywhere on the court?
Yeah, I didn't get the chance to go to the 3SSB finals. My coworker, Zach Gagan, got the chance to be out there. So he reported back to me that he looked really good. And like you said, he can shoot the lights out of the basketball. And obviously that works with Pope's system. And really, who doesn't want a guy that can shoot the ball? So I think that he would be really good in Kentucky's system. And based on where they're looking at in this 2025 class, he makes a lot of sense.
Final player I want to kind of touch on here with you, Jacob, and again, I really appreciate you hopping on the show. AJ Dybantsa is a really, really, really good player, like through the roof potential, top prospect across the board in the 2025 class. 6'8", 6'9", depending on where you look. 185 pounds. Massachusetts basketball player of the year during following a freshman campaign at St. Sebastian School. 19.1 points, almost 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.5 blocks. I mean, this wing forward, whatever you want to call him, he does it all. Just a very special player, and some really, really big time programs going after him. Auburn right now, according to On3's recruiting prediction machine, is the leader to land him, which kind of surprises me, honestly. But kind of give me your take on this prospect here, the best prospect in next year's class.
Yeah, like, he is the best high school basketball player in the world right now. I don't really think there's any question about that. I know Cam Boozer is right there, and maybe production-wise right now, Cam might be the better player, but potential-wise, ceiling-wise, who's going to be the number one pick in the draft-wise? It's AJ. I know that it's hard on the On3 prediction machine when there haven't been any predictions yet.
Right.
So a lot of it is based on visits. He did take an official visit to Auburn. He also took one to USC under under the previous staff before Musselman with Andy Enfield. So those were two schools that got official visits. But talking to his dad this weekend, they're going to be narrowing down on a few schools towards the end of this month. I believe he said around 5 to 7 schools. And then they'll be taking official visits in the fall. And then from there, they're looking to commit sometime in February. So the real question will be who gets these official visits. I do expect Kentucky to be one of the schools in that 5, 6, 7 range. And then it's just a matter of who can close him out. I know that he's probably going to have the highest NIL asking price of any high school basketball player in the NIL era. So the real question is who's going to be able and who's going to be willing to commit that kind of resources to one singular player on their team for the 2025 roster.
Yeah, asking millions just off the bat before you've even played a single minute of college basketball, it's kind of tough to commit to. But at the same time, Jacob, I mean, you said it. I think, frankly, both of the Boozer twins look great. But when you watch their stuff, when you watch them at their best compared to AJ, I would take AJ every single day of the week. I mean, it's just hard with that size and with that ability. He's continued to build on it throughout his high school career. I would be hard pressed to think of a high school prospect, maybe outside of Cooper Flagg over the past couple of seasons, that kind of lives up to the hype for me when it comes to watching AJ. And I don't necessarily mean the hype as in like the social media attention and what the internet's saying about him, just in terms of raw ability. I think that he is a very, very special player. Final question here about AJ to you. If Kentucky were somehow able to pull this off, if they were able to kind of push all their chips in here, get him on an official visit, get him the asking price that he's looking for, and they were able to get him to commit sometime next year, what do you think that could mean for Mark Pope and this staff, as well as their 2025 class and moving forward?
Well, the thing that everyone is talking about with this Kentucky class is who's going to be that first 5-star commitment that's really going to set the tone for, hey, Mark Pope is here for real. He's really here, and he's going to recruit at a high level. So I think that would really mean a lot for this Kentucky team. And then just to bring in a guy like that, a lot of recruits around the world would be seeing the number one player in the world at Kentucky, and it would mean a lot for just recruiting and wanting to get guys on campus and wanting to get guys in that Kentucky blue.
Super, super excited about what could be, man. I'm looking forward to it. Just kind of wrapping up some thoughts here. Again, I appreciate you hanging out. Before I kind of get to some things about this upcoming season with this year's roster, you do have your own show over on KSR on the YouTube channel. Do us a favor, man. Plug your stuff. Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, so Here Comes the Boom is the name of my new recruiting show on the KSR network. We're going to have shows on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever you find your podcasts. And we just filmed a segment with Jamie Shaw today talking about who stood out at Peach Jam and breaking down some of these guys' games. So it should be a fun one.
Looking forward to seeing that episode. I will drop your first episode. I'll try and drop that in the description of this show. I would appreciate it if you guys go and check that out. Really, really good stuff over on the KSR YouTube channel. As always, Jacob leading the recruiting news now with Here Comes the Boom. And Jacob, I kind of want to shift our focus as we wrap up here to this upcoming season. Like we talked about earlier, new faces all over the place. And when you look at the roster, it's no different. You've got 9 transfers coming in. You've got 3 new freshmen. There's a lot of hype around how this team can score the basketball. That scrimmage against La Familia, dude, it got some people excited. It got me really excited just looking at the numbers. It's going, okay, well, if they scored 55 points combined through these 2 videos and they made this amount of threes, the math checks out. And it's really, really, really turned me around, I think, over these last couple of months, just kind of hearing what's coming out of practice, to see this thing kind of fleshed out and to see everybody at their different positions. Just a very broad, generic question here to you. What do you think about Kentucky basketball and Mark Pope getting closer to the season?
I think they're in a really good spot right now. Jackson Robinson is the guy that everyone's talking about, and from what I'm hearing, he's living up to the hype. You got Andrew Carr. I think Robinson and Carr are probably the two that you're going to hear the most about heading into the season, and rightfully so. I think that they're probably the two leaders on this team from an offensive output and just generally kind of being the best players so far. But really, you have just a ton of guys that can play significant minutes. That's what I really like about this team. Going into practices, I was concerned about, okay, you have a lot of guys that expect to play big minutes, and that could be kind of a concern. But now I think a lot of these guys have bought into their roles. We'll see how that translates when the season starts. But it seems like these guys have built a lot of chemistry in a short amount of time, and I'm not as concerned about potential roles and maybe some players getting upset with not playing as much. I think that that's kind of been set.
Is there a player right now that we, as a collective, fan base, media alike, are not talking about enough that maybe could end up being, in your mind, a bigger contributor to Kentucky than we expect, or just somebody that's kind of flying over the under the radar? Who is that guy right now?
Yeah, that's tough because I feel like Andrew Carr was that guy for a long period of time, and I do not think he is that guy anymore. He is no longer flying under the radar. A guy that I would say is probably Lamont Butler, because I know Kirk Kriisa gets a lot of the attention over at the guard spot. Even Kobe Brea gets some of that attention, and Lamont is just a winner. Like, he knows how to win at the highest level, obviously taking San Diego State to that national title game. He is willing to do whatever it takes, whether it be playing on ball, playing off ball. He just wants to be on the court and contribute. And I think that that's exactly what you need with a team as experienced as this. You need a guy that can just get on the court and do whatever Mark Pope says, and do whatever it takes to win. So I think that Lamont is that guy.
There are a lot of great personalities up and down this roster, but Lamont's one of those guys that I look at, and it's just, he is the definition of this team for me, as far as just how likable this group is, man. Like, every single transfer, every single freshman, they all seem like great guys, and they all seem already, through just a short amount of time, like they really do care about what they're doing here with Kentucky and Coach Pope. Final question here to you, Jacob, before we let you get out. I know we mentioned players that could be flying under the radar. Do you have a favorite player that you may be monitoring closer heading into this season? Somebody that excites you, just as far as their game, their personality, whatever it may be.
I'll say Otega away, because that's more of just a personal thing, because I've covered him in high school and up through this point. He did an interview with me after he committed to Kentucky. So him, Amari Williams also did an interview with me after he committed to Kentucky. So I got to show some love to him. Ansley Almanor, those three are the three that did interviews with me. So by virtue of that, I think they've earned being my favorite player.
Otega, Ansley, and Amari. Good stuff, Jacob. Again, one more time, shout your stuff out over at KSR. Again, we really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm writing for KSR Plus premium site, and Here Comes the Boom is over on our YouTube channel. So stay tuned to that. We'll have a show out soon.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that was our conversation with Jacob Polacheck of Kentucky Sports Radio. Again, links to his latest episode over on the KSR YouTube channel, as well as his Twitter, are in the description below. Go give him a follow if you have not already. Go give his podcast a listen. Great work covering Kentucky basketball recruiting at KSR, and KSR Plus would encourage you to take a listen. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.